Hi, I'm Rashayla Marie Brown, Dr. R&B, and this is Rage to Master. Today, I join you from Atlanta, Georgia. Yes, that's right, the home of MLK, Outkast, TLC, and even Tyler Perry Studios. There are so many ways that Black creativity has been preserved, archived, and kept alive in Atlanta, Georgia, and I am proud to have a part of my story here. After years of traveling around the world and trying to immigrate to other countries, I've decided to return to the South for a variety of different reasons. One is that I just finished my PhD, and that's why I'm now calling myself Dr. R&B. My PhD in performance studies, it's 326 pages of me writing about different forms of reparations for slavery in terms of artistic practice as well as spiritual. In my dissertation, I have a lot of work that I am considering Black femme aesthetics. In this episode, I'm interviewing my friend Nikita Gale, who also got her start as a creative in Atlanta. When Nikita was working as a photographer, I was designing shirts as a graphic designer with my own business, but also working at Coca-Cola. We both came from industries that were very passionate about the commercial side of work, and we both found that there was something that we were longing for in terms of the ideas behind the work that we're making. We didn't just want to work for commissions anymore and being hands for hire for other people. We wanted to make work that meant something to us. And I am so proud of Nikita. In this conversation, she is right on the precipice of participating in the Whitney Biennial and then garnering the top prize of this exhibition for an iconic artwork about the contracts and legalities behind reproducing a song, but also has a ghostly, otherworldly presence by allowing a piano to perform by itself. A lot of Nikita's work is about making the objects perform without a performer being there. And a lot of my work is about the performer being there, but also resisting the terms of visibility through her voice. So this conversation between us is not only a time capsule in a very pivotal moment in her practice, but it's also a pivotal time in my life. At the time, I was located in London, trying to make life work as a creative, and just having a really hard time finding a community there. What I did find that back here in the United States, as crazy and difficult and ridiculous as it can be, is that there are people here who really want to see me succeed in my career as an artist and also in my work as a scholar. One of the reasons that I wanted to go to Europe and also to pursue a PhD was inspired by an artist that both Nikita and I talk about in this interview, Adrian Piper. Adrian Piper has a PhD from Harvard in philosophy, and she represents a generation of conceptual artists who were speaking a lot about philosophy, but she's the only one who ended up getting an actual PhD in the subject. Adrian Piper is a Black woman who works in modes of performance that also resisted a certain type of visibility as a performance-based artist. She has very firm boundaries about who she's going to engage with in person and what exhibitions she's going to attend, even of her own. Adrian Piper refused to leave Europe to attend her survey exhibition at the MoMA in New York. And a lot of people were questioning, why would she do that? Parts of the conversation that Nikita and I have talk about this tension of visibility and also preserving one's humanity and right to privacy as a visual artist. I'm dealing with this right now. Putting out a podcast and dealing with the demanding schedule of a content creator is something that I'm resisting against. Every episode of Rage to Master is thoughtfully curated, edited, and designed. It is not designed for rapid consumption. It's designed to make you think and to make you come back to it over and over again. And so I hope that you find something in this episode that keeps you sustained for a period of time so that we both can catch a break, y'all. I know I'm tired, and I know you tired too. I'm going to show excerpts of the performance that this podcast is named after, that I performed exactly 10 years ago at the Museum of Contemporary Art, Chicago. This performance, Rage to Master, was groundbreaking for me in my practice. And I found that more and more people want me to talk about the legalities behind the work that I'm making. Not only do I have a lot to say, and I think a lot about the things that I have to say, is that there's a community of scholars who's also reviewed this scholarship. So unlike Cheyenne Bryant, I'm going to prove to you that I have a PhD by sharing with you some of the words in my dissertation. And I'm also going to share those words with the understanding that a lot of these aren't meant to be read by a wide audience. They can be perceived as really, really hard to get into. I am the first in my family to receive a PhD from an R1 university. R1 is the specific classification for the top research institutions in the United States. I'm really proud to have received a PhD from this type of institution. And let's just say, if you finish a PhD and there's not one person who can stand up and say they were a part of that process, that's probably because you didn't do it. So saying it all to say that if you're claiming expertise in something, I'm going to check those receipts. And now you can check mine.
Yes. So, I wanted to ask y'all a question. First of all, who are the artists? All the artists, raise your hand, yes. So I'm gonna pick on an artist. Who knows something about the auction market? I got you, boo.
You have Sotheby's and you have Christie's in New York. There's one here over off of Roosevelt. I can't remember what it's called though. Yeah.
I can't remember what it's called either, but did you know that basically somebody can buy your work, right, as an artist, now, for like $100, right? Because you're strapped for cash or you need it. And then when you blow up, they can sell it at auction for like $1 million. How much money does the artist get? Zero. Do y'all think that's okay? Well, it's the Wild Wild West out here. That's what's going on. Let's see. I'm gonna pick on you. So, what do you think? Why do you think that artists continue to allow that to happen?
Because it's easier to use systems that are in place already.
It's easier to use the systems in place already. I'm gonna pick on you. What do you think that Prince would think about that?
I don't think he'd be having it.
I don't think he'd be having it either. I think he'd be ashamed of us, the visual artists, that we let that happen. Because musicians figured it out. What do they get? What is that?
Royalties.
Oh, yes, royalties. The purple one. Royalty. He loved royalties. So, in that spirit, I've consulted with about 3 different lawyers to construct something that I hope might be useful, not only for me, even though y'all know I like money. That's not a question. But something that I hope will be useful, not only for me, but for other people. If you wish to have it, you can have it. Felicia, would you please present to me? This is a contract. Agreement made as of the first day of April 2016 between Rashayla Marie Brown, hereinafter referred to as the artist, and any user, hereinafter referred to as the user, with respect to the sale of an artwork hereinafter referred to as the work. Whereas the artist has created the work and has full rights, title, and interest therein, whereas the artist wishes to sell the work, and whereas the user has viewed the work and wishes either to purchase, reprint, or create likeness of it, now therefore in condition of the foregoing premises and the mutual obligations, covenants, and conditions hereinafter set forth and other valuable considerations, the parties hereto agree as follows. The artist will not repair works that were damaged by the user. The artist will provide the user with a certificate of authenticity upon request. The user agrees not to resell work for more than the original sale value without the consent of the artist, whether the work was purchased through a gallery representative or directly through the artist. All resales must be negotiated between the reselling entity and the artist, depending on where the sale was made. In the event a resale is negotiated, the artist will request 50% of the final sale value that exceeds the price of the original sale retransfer. If the user in any way whatsoever sells, gives, or trades the work, if it is inherited from the user, or if a third party pays compensation for its destruction, the user or the representative of his estate must notify the artist within 30 days. Transferees bound. If anyone becomes the new owner of the work with notice of this contract, that person shall be bound to all of its terms. Any entity that resells the work by the artist at a profit without the consent of the artist will be prohibited from purchasing future work and will be subject to remedies for breach of contract, including damages. That means money, y'all. Copyright and reproduction. The artist reserves all reproduction rights, including the right to claim statutory copyright in the work. The work may not be reproduced in any manner without the express written consent of the artist. Any entity that reproduces work by the artist must credit the artist as Rashayla Marie Brown and reprint the entire title of the work that is being reproduced. In the event the entire title cannot be reproduced, the artist will provide an abbreviated title that can be used in publication. This agreement echoes the artist's commitment that the work is not taken out of context or results in co-optation by nonprofit or for-profit entities. This agreement reflects the commitment of the mother to the artist, the original artist of the object that transferred ownership of the object that the artist prefers in perpetuity. In witness whereof the parties here to have signed this agreement as of the date set forth above.
Okay. Well, first off, thank you so much for making time to do this, Nikita.
Thank you for making time.
I am excited about what you're doing with, one, being a conceptual artist who is going into all these different spaces, but two, a person who is interested in performance from these angles that I think a lot of people don't consider. And I have to say it, it's like an elephant in the room as well as a Black person talking about performance, but not trying to do and be that, right?
No, I get it. If I were to look at all of the different shows I've put together and like work that I've made over the years, it's like so much of that work is a product of what other people and their narratives and histories and perspectives are bringing into it. But I think I came out of this, I was a part of this art community where people were doing everything. There wasn't like a particular label on anything. It's like, you're a musician, you're an illustrator, you're a painter, you're a writer,
and you do hair.
Like whatever. And you do hair, But it's one of those things where I really feel like being in that community early on really sort of opened up possibilities for like what it could look like to be an artist. Yeah, I think I'm interested in performance, not from the perspective of a performer, but almost as the perspective from somebody who is part of an audience, because I was, my art history knowledge was basically what I was gathering from like Tumblr and Wikipedia. And some of the mentors who I encountered like when I was in Atlanta. But one of the things that was interesting about that city too is that it's such a small arts community. I think there's always that kind of tension between commercial artists who are working for big studios or corporations and are achieving some very specific idea that's produced by a director versus, artists who are managing their own studios, making their own work.
I was going to ask you, does representation trouble you.
Yeah, it's like that's what all my work is about. And until I find an answer, I
Right.
will keep making it, like, which will probably be
Good.
never, but it's the beauty of the struggle.
Right.
I feel like I have a really weird sense of humor with this stuff. Like, I like to imagine that you enter a space and it feels serious because the materials, the color, it's usually pretty austere.
Mm-hmm.
But there are these things like when I'm making the work where I'm chuckling to myself a little bit.
Okay. That's good for me to know.
But just the way the ambivalence operates in my work, which is
Mm.
it always feels like this kind of
Mm-hmm.
umbrella, because I'm like, what is the other standard, just baseline way of moving through the world that is not just deep ambivalence about
Mm.
most things you encounter?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
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 I'm wondering how performance may have shifted or changed for you and how you think about it when you started working with people performing with objects that you design. And I'm specifically thinking about the BMW guitar.
Yeah, I that guitar project was interesting because it's this collaboration with BMW and Freeze called Open Studio. And one of the sort of premises of that project is that the artist, the commission in some way incorporates some aspect of production process.
Right.
In guitar culture, it's like a cool guitar design comes out and it's named after some guitarist.
Right.
And so I was like, well, I don't think there's like a guitar there's like a guitar model that's been named after, Big Mama Thornton
Right.
or Memphis Minnie
Mm-hmm.
or Sister Rosetta Tharpe. One of the things that was really cool about that experience was talking to the musicians. And there was something very affirming about all of them just seeming so surprised
Mm.
by how good the guitars felt. Because typically it's like there's like a standard
Right.
shape, and most of them
Yes.
are really heavy and like they aren't typically made for people with smaller bodies or people with breasts. With the BMW, like the guitar work, I worked really closely with the performers and the producers around contracts, particularly relating to how images of these performances would be used.
I think talking about contracts, I've done a lot of performance-based work and installations that literally physically have the legal language in it, but that legal language is in my contract. It's not actually completely enforceable under Illinois law, which is the state that I was in. I understand that there are values that I have that are beyond the scope of the law. And that is something that a collector or an institution should be aware of if they're going to continue to use images of my likeness or representations of my work in some long-standing way. They are more of a performance themselves to engage these institutions and collectors in a kind of ethics practice.
Right.
And so I don't, I'm very curious because I feel like this definitely changes a lot, the conversation when you're working with real life human performers.
But and that's the thing that is always, it's the thing that I'm just endlessly curious about is the overlap in the Venn diagrams between labor and entertainment.
Yes.
And labor as also the sort of sensory experience that is, it's satisfying, it's consumable, it's a type of work that's meant to be consumed.
Right.
But again, it doesn't quite deal with the question of like visibility in general, like what that.
Yeah, I think the idea of, I'm not going to make assumptions about you, but I know that you're a Scorpio and I'm a Virgo. And me and Beyonce actually have the same birthday. But I know it's kind of terrible. Actually, every year I have to deal with this. mania. But I but what I've learned to appreciate is that these signs in particular have a private life. It's very much about the private life and
Yeah.
keeping
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
kind of holy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I would
Yeah.
say in
Yeah.
that regard, yeah, this extension of performance through the recording of the performance is a lot
Yeah.
also what I think about, and obviously what Beyonce is thinking about. And I think that's what she does well, which is why she doesn't look haggard and run down and have all these
Yeah.
issues that I think a lot of other
Yeah.
performers do,
Yeah.
because she's
Yeah.
been very good about, okay, nobody saw my social media really at all during COVID. Nobody knows what she did
Yeah.
during COVID. She was
Yeah.
gone.
No one
She
knows.
wasn't here.
Yeah.
She did
Yeah.
release Black is King though, and
Oh,
some
right.
kind of weird little
Yeah.
vignettes on Instagram promoting that, but it was not, there was no labor from her during that
Yeah.
time. She
Yeah.
was really
Yeah.
out just like I think everybody
Yeah.
else. So that was interesting for me to pay a kind of attention to as well. Like, how do you extend
Mhm.
not only the life
Yeah.
of the performance, but your own life as a Black person
Right.
in this
Right.
space doing
Yeah.
this type of work? And I think
Yeah.
honestly, the kind of work that you do leads itself into that space as well, because you're allowed to be and you're allowed to not be,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
in your work. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
I was curious, and I only think another Black queer person can ask these types of questions to another Black queer person working
Yeah.
in the vein that we're working. So I'm saying this
Yeah. Yeah.
without encouraging, if this part
Right.
goes into the
Right.
interview, other people to start
Yeah.
asking you this, because I really don't
Yeah.
want it to go that way.
Yeah.
But I'm just trying to understand a common thread of really what I'm trying to think of is like a Black femme aesthetics. And when I say femme,
Right.
I'm not meaning
Yeah.
feminine presentation. I'm
Yeah.
thinking,
Yeah.
you know, that kind of
Yeah.
abstraction of femininity that
Right.
can be queer
Yeah.
and can be really anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
But it's
Totally.
definitely about playing with the concept of access to one's body. That's what the way, one of the ways
Yeah.
I'm seeing it.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you think that there's kind of, if you think that there is a common thread there between what you're doing, and let's go all the way to a person like Beyonce.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like,
Yeah.
do you already fantasize about that connection? Because I'm thinking about this
Right.
in the vein, and I'm going to give you a reference so that it's clear that
Yeah.
it's not like an
Okay.
essentializing ridiculousness.
All good.
I'm thinking of Yuri McMillan's book, Embodied Avatars,
Oh, yeah.
where there's a chapter talking about Adrian Piper and this conceptual artwork. And then there's thinking about mythic being. And then there's going all the way to the other end with Nicki Minaj and Janelle Monáe. And it's like, whoa, these are the same book. Are we really doing this?
Interesting.
And there's even another chapter on, I think it was Ellen Craft, a woman who pretended to, I might be getting this from another book, but there's definitely some slave performance, anti-performance, Adrian Piper, and then Nicki Minaj. So it's, we're all over the place. But the common thread is this concept of embodied avatars. And what I think Yuri McMillan is proposing, which is really sound, is that there's this thread of when you put a Black woman into performance mode, that there's like this desire to create an avatar or like a kind of cloak of protection through this other figure that's separating you essentially from the audience. And it may be as beautiful and spectacular and nails and hair as Beyonce, which is really still creating an immense amount of distance between you and the viewer.
Sasha Fierce.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you putting an image of your eye on the wall, but being very like cheeky on like, well, is this me? Is this not me? Kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out what those common threads are without getting into essentializing. But I think the avatar was a really good framing device for me for thinking about, oh yeah, I did notice that a lot. We do that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. Oh my God, there's so many thoughts in my head about this one, like the avatar, because it's like the avatar, like if I were to think about the term, it's like, I initially wanted to think of the avatar as just a kind of like alternate identity or some kind of pseudonym or like a different, like a particular figure. But this also makes me think about the idea of an avatar as a kind of like more of a structural, what's the word I want to use? An avatar is a structure.
Yeah.
This idea of maybe there are certain materials that I might use in my practice or a certain way of approaching things aesthetically that it could be a kind of avatar, like my resistance to using figuration as a way of producing ideas, and instead using lots of ready-made materials or materials that are very recognizable, but have all of these kinds of social and political histories attached to them. And yeah, so I would say this is a very early answer to that question, but I do think I have a relationship to avatars for sure in my work, like using certain kinds of materials that read as more generic, but also really easy entry points, like a car or a guitar or eyeglasses or like wall studs. Those also feel like a form of avatar.
And the concrete kind of the movement. Really, you've stretched this, you've pulled this, and then it's like
because those are
concrete.
Those feel like performances to me.
Sure.
They're called
like
recordings
an
because
action
of that.
Okay.
Okay, exactly,
there we go.
Exactly. But oh my gosh. Yeah, my brain is going in a million different directions with what you're saying about
I have some
Beyonce
words
and the avatar. Yeah.
that came up when you started talking about your work. I was like, oh, that might be close to what I'm trying to get to, because I'm actively in the process of writing a dissertation, and I'm trying to decide if I want to call it Black Femme Aesthetics, because I'm like, God damn it, I didn't want to do that. Actually. And I think the scholar, what's her name? I think it's Rizvana Bradley. She did the Loophole Retreat.
Rizvana.
And she has this anti-aesthetics thing that I'm like, okay, maybe I need to pay attention to that. But I think it's a similar concept, actually, what I'm thinking about. Because in addition to Avatar, I'm thinking about intentional evasiveness, ephemerality. I'm also thinking about conjuring, which you said earlier, that being a huge part of what I would consider Black Femme Aesthetics, calling on names, right? Calling on ancestors, calling on people from the past, and what that actually does. Because it's not just symbolic, it's doing something. You're conjuring, you're bringing them into the space. What does it mean to bring the ghost of Tina Turner into a space?
And also just the conjuring. It's like when we see Beyonce perform, she's singing that Tina Turner song at the beginning of every after she died, she's saying that song at the beginning of every show. And it's this opening up or calling in. Because another thing, I can't remember who was telling, maybe I heard this on the podcast or something, but it was someone talking about how, and not to belabor the Beyonce point, but like how she does this thing that's similar to Adrian Piper writing about her own work all the time, where she, in these shows, there are all of these samples, like so many music samples. You you almost lose track because some of them are like 5 seconds long. But it's like there are all of these samples embedded in the live performances that aren't necessarily on the album. And it's like those samples are situating us historically and where she's coming from. And she's saying, this is where I'm coming from. This is what I'm referencing. And because if you were to, I'm sure somebody has already done this, but if you were to just catalog all of those references, you would have hundreds of hundreds.
And citation, I'm thinking of that too, because conjuring and citation can be two separate ideas, because citation is also about giving credit and acknowledgement, which is something obviously that doesn't always happen, as to your point about the Black women in rock music, who any real student of the guitar would know, but for some reason they've all been taken out of the discourse of the history. And so conjuring, evasiveness, citation. I'm also thinking about a lot these days a concept of like, it's reproduction, but it's not, because there's this anti-maternal thing that's happening, even if they are maternal. The act of putting your child on stage is representative of that for me. The anti-protection, it's like, you're out here, this is what we do. And the kind of sternness of the Black mother figuring over the performer. So either she's that figure,
like on a tank.
She's that motherly, stern figure, or she had that before her, kind of demanding from her a certain type of performance.
Yeah.
And there's
Yeah.
this anxiety about maternity that's there,
Yeah.
whether they're, I don't know, I'm
Yeah.
thinking of it broader than having children. I'm thinking of it in terms of
Right.
reproduction, the
Right.
concept of
Right.
forced reproduction.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Well, you know
know,
what? Have you read that? Oh my God, what is the book? It's called Constructing a Nervous System.
okay, no, I haven't heard of that.
Margot, hang on a second. It's so good, Constructing a Nervous System. Margot Jefferson, she's constructed an autobiography of herself through herself as a consumer of Black spectacular performance and primarily music.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think with the lineage thing, like for me, one of the reasons I latched onto Tina Turner passionately is because of this part of her story that is so much about genre and how the system of genre really failed her in terms of the type of performance she was producing and the real failure of the system of categorization to create a space for her.
Yeah. I think that would definitely lead someone to a conceptual art practice then in that case, because then it just gives you the freedom to look at any medium necessary in order to really pick apart this thing. And that makes a lot of sense to me to really do that. It feels both really smart and also very, not just intellectually smart, but very practical at the same time. This is how you're going to get to the bottom of this.
It's the practical part. And also understanding that as I'm doing this work and trying to carve out a pathway, there are younger generations of artists who hopefully are like finding their way to the work. I wrote this essay about Tina Turner in Triple Canopy, and like one of the opening stories is about this scene in What's Love Got to Do with It, where Angela Bassett's like recording River Deep Mountain High, and there's like this orchestra behind her, and and I just remember thinking that was like so cool to just see this like apparatus.
You know what fucked me up in that movie?
What?
The Buddhism. As a
my
kid
God,
being raised in a Christian household, I was like, what's that? My mother was like, don't worry about that. And I'm like, so we just gonna keep watching this movie
that was the
over and over again and
Yeah.
pretend like we don't want to engage with. So of course, when I become an adult, what do? I immediately run, if I can, to any religious practice, you know, outside of what I was raised into. I was watching that when I was 10 years old, like in the house on repeat, VHS.
Yep. Same.
I mean, even thinking about somebody like an Adrian Piper who has spent a lot of time with yogic philosophy as it pertains to a more kind of esoteric, expansive bodily embodied practice. I just, when I go into your work too, there is this stateliness about it that can also kind of give it this feeling of the spiritual at times that can be very like, ooh, okay, there's magnitude here. And so I don't know, maybe I'm gonna have to end on that.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I feel like that like takes me back to that word of ambivalence, not as a negative thing, but as having multiple valences. It's like it can be this sort of, it can be concrete, but it can also be spiritual.
Yes.
It can be all the things.
Yes.
Introduction. Undisciplinary artist, the decolonial, reparative, and spiritual praxis of authorship and ancestral afterlife. I entered a PhD program to broaden my opportunities as an undisciplinary artist. After years of practice while working as the first director of diversity and inclusion at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, I created the label undisciplinary to distinguish my conceptual art practice from other interdisciplinary artists and as a satirical jab at authorship, which allowed me to view almost any performative action that I took, including wearing a wig or organizing student panels, as art.
Under the now attacked umbrella of diversity, equity, and inclusion, my position was created specifically for me through the leadership of SAIC's first Black president, Dr. Walter Massey. After founding the group Black at SAIC as a non-traditional student, I viewed my day-to-day work as DEI director in line with student organizing and civil rights movements. I used my institutional role as director of a department to redirect resources to underserved students, faculty, and staff. This visible yet critical stance sometimes restricted the spaces I was willing to work in and left me with a sense that I was being undermined by those who claimed to support me. This suspicion was confirmed in 2016 when a globally prominent Black artist who I considered a close friend called to inform me he personally blocked a juried professional opportunity because he saw me as a threat to what he called, quote, his space, which was actually a university space he did not own. This betrayal from someone in power feeling threatened by my potential made me question the interpersonal, intracommunal dynamics that also affect how artists are canonized, who controls access to archives, and how institutions decide which artists to include or exclude from their collections. Following the centrality of artist scholars in performance studies and the canon of conceptual artists who publish as an aspect of their practice, such as Adrian Piper, Alan Caprow, Coco Fusco, E. Patrick Johnson, Disoyini Madison, Yoko Ono, and Yvonne Rainer, I repeatedly turned to my artistic practice as my primary research method in this dissertation. Thus, this dissertation centers undisciplinary artistic production and related spiritual practices as a key form of research, alongside traditional archival research, close reading, interviews, and performance and media analysis methods. Since committing to this approach, I completed 7 artistic residencies, created 6 large-scale installations, including a biennial work, and performed several times. I also directed an experimental short film that competed in Oscar-qualifying festivals, winning 2 special jury mentions. My ancestor altar, daily prayers, silent meditations, divination from the orisha of my spiritual godparents, and rituals also provided comfort in times of tragedy and also a deeply embodied sense of the value of reparative decolonial practice. I realized that, contrary to how the art world and neoliberal DEI might have it, I wasn't put on this earth just to work until exhaustion, be mistreated by those I trusted, and then die unknown. My ancestors, who endured the horrors of the slave trade and fled Hungary after World War I, didn't either. My goal is to decenter academic discourse on spirituality that is mostly theoretical and based on hauntology or Hegelian metaphysics. Using artistic collaboration and production, embodied spiritual practice, close reading, interviews, and media analysis, this dissertation explores how Black femme aesthetics, artistic expressions, productions, and embodiments from those who identify as Black and feminine, redefine core mechanisms of academic research. Black femme aesthetics challenge these mechanisms of the archive, representation, kinship, ownership, categorization, and ethics, often through collaborative actions that engage our ancestors and archives, what I will theorize as ancestral afterlife. I examine how oral history, ritual-influenced performance art, image-based media practices, and collaborative frameworks can be used to establish a decolonial reparative practice. And drawing from performance studies, Black studies, religious studies, queer studies, and film studies, I theorize an aesthetic orientation of the Black femme that upends the extractive acquisition, interpretation, and circulation of knowledge as data or the archive.